Beatitudes are one of my absolute favorite gospel passages. It's Jesus' inaugural speech in Matthew's gospel. It's the very first thing out of his mouth publicly. And while God, through Moses, gave us the Ten Commandments, God, through Jesus, gives us the Beatitudes, a new way of living our relationship with God. You may have picked up on it, but there were 8 Beatitudes. And the 8th one kind of spins off into a 9th one that was about rejoicing in the face of persecution. I like to look at the first Beatitudes one way and the last 4 differently. The first 4, blessed are the poor, blessed are those who mourn, blessed are the meek, blessed are those who hunger and thirst. To me, these first 4 are describing negative states. While there's nothing good about poverty or mourning or being too meek or hungering and thirsting, these are all states we find ourselves in at one point or another. You may be experiencing right now in your life one of those negative states. Yet Jesus is telling us that there is a deeper blessedness that is more profound, more real, more enduring within us that can never be eradicated by poverty or mourning or meekness or hunger and thirsting. In other words, with these first 4 Beatitudes, we learn that we are more than any negative thing that can drag us down in life. We are more than our failed marriage, more than our sickness, more than our poor self-image, more than our addictions, more than anything that can bring us down. That's what the first 4 tell me. The next 4 Beatitudes, blessed are the merciful, the pure in heart, the peacemakers, and those who are persecuted for their faith. To me, these 4 describe how this moreness, this blessedness that is within us, wants to express itself, wants to manifest itself in the world. So hold on to those 2 thoughts. The first 4, you're more than anything that can drag you down in life, because there's this deeper blessedness within you. And the next 4, it wants to show itself and give itself to the world. So just tuck that into the back of your mind right now. On this solemnity of All Saints, I'd like to say a little bit about saints and a little bit about saints in the making. As you may or may not know, the greatest changes in the church's history happened during many of our lifetimes. I'm referring to the Second Vatican Council that took place between 1962 and 1965. It was more radical than we think, for we were challenged, with the help of God's grace, of course, to change the way we thought about God, the church's relationship to the world, the way we celebrate liturgy, etc. But one of the greatest gifts of Vatican II was something called the universal call to holiness. That is, we are all called to holiness, not just popes and priests and religious. Everyone, by virtue of their baptism, is called to holiness. That's why when I was 2 weeks old, I was baptized, and that was a more foundational and more important event than my ordination when I was 31. Why? Because the call to holiness comes from baptism. The way I try, I'm not saying I succeed, but the way I try to live that holiness is through being a priest. But let's admit, what comes first is always baptism. Okay? Everyone in their particular situation in life is called to reflect God's presence in the world. While holiness can be lived out in monasteries, no doubt about it, for most of us, it will be lived out by wiping runny noses, changing diapers, struggling through teenage anxieties, paying bills, repairing leaky roofs, dealing with sickness and death, working on personal relationships, and struggling with questions of faith. These are the arenas we run in. These are the arenas where our salvation and our holiness is worked out. Maybe that is what John is referring to at the end of that first reading in the book of Revelation, when the angel points to those dressed in white and says, "These are the ones who have come out of the great ordeal." These are the ones who were not afraid to get their hands dirty. These are the ones who live their faith not just in the church pews, but in the messiness of people's lives outside these four walls of worship. These are the ones who, though stained by the trials of life, still followed the way Jesus laid out for them, even though it may have cost them dearly. I'm thinking of a woman back in the Ottawa Valley, Liz, who for 10 years daily went to the nursing home to see her husband before he died of complications from Alzheimer's. He didn't know her at all. He didn't know her all that time during those 10 years, but she went anyways. She had come through the great trial, not bitter, not angry, not needing to blame anyone, and not needing to say, "Why me?" or even "Why him?" She came through with her soiled clothes and dirty hands, washed clean and made white in the blood of the Lamb, Jesus. The blood refers to following Jesus into death. And if we do that, the resurrection will take care of itself. Liz's call to holiness required a lot of dying on her part over those 10 years. She, in my mind, is a saint in the making. Saints are glimpses of what God is like and what we are called to be. Saints are people who know the truth of the first four Beatitudes, that there is a deeper blessedness in all people from the moment of conception that can never be destroyed by poverty, mourning, meekness, or any hunger or thirst. Maybe that is what St. Mother Teresa knew and led her to say, "When I see people, I see God." Saints are people who know the truth of the last four Beatitudes, that while there is a deep blessedness within them, it's not just for them. This deep blessedness is meant to express itself in the giving of mercy, in purity of heart, in peacemaking, and in suffering on account of their faith in Jesus. Blessedness, like a wonderful light within us, is never meant to be put under a bushel basket. It is meant to shine so as to lead all people to God. Although I'm surrounded by many holy people in this parish unit, I would like to make reference to two people whose beatification the church celebrates this month. 3 weeks ago, on October 10th, in Assisi, Italy, because this teenager wanted to be buried close to St. Francis, his idol, the church beatified Carlo Acutis. He was born in 1991, raised in Milan, Italy, and died in 2006 from leukemia. In his 15 years on this earth, he was a typical teenager. He loved hanging out with his friends, playing soccer with them, and encouraging them when they were down. Although still a young teenager, he was working at a university level when it came to his hobby of computer programming and making videos and animation. He will be the patron saint of the internet. Isn't that wonderful? He was a jokester with his classmates and teachers and enjoyed playing with his PlayStation, although he limited his time with it. He called Eucharist his highway to heaven. His faith made him a source of mockery. Yet it was the very thing that brought his parents and so many others back to church after being away for many, many years. Carlo wasn't just devoted to the Eucharist, but saw the Eucharist as a constant invitation to live his faith in the world. He could not walk to school, even as a child, without giving food and blankets and sleeping bags to the homeless of Milan. While he lived in the fashion capital of the world, he did not want his mother buying him brand-name clothing or shoes, as the money could be used to help the poor, which he and his mother did. He helped out at the soup kitchens and encouraged his classmates to do the same. Speaking about holiness, this child said, "The only thing we have to ask God for in prayer is the desire to be holy." Notice it's not a request to be holy, only a request to have the desire to be holy. God will do the rest. The other person I'm referring to is Father Michael Mcgivney, who was beatified last night in Connecticut. He was a saint in the making and known as the founder of the Knights of Columbus. Like Carlo Acutis, Father Michael died young. He was only 38. His own father died when Michael, the eldest of 13, was only 21, so there must have been a lot of younger siblings behind him. That left his mother to raise a number of young children on her own. Michael interrupted his seminary studies in St. Hyacinthe, Quebec, to come home and help his mother. This may have formed him more than all his theological studies. As a young priest in 1882, he founded the Knights of Columbus, whose sole purpose was to help widows and orphans at a time when there was no social assistance. Perhaps he knew the sufferings of others more keenly because of what his own mother and family suffered. Michael Mcgivney believed in the deeper blessedness of everyone, despite the fact that many live in states of poverty. Father Michael's response to the material and spiritual needs of people was his way of living God's call to holiness. As you ponder God's call to holiness in your own life, I leave you with the words of Blessed Carlo Acutis, teenager, saint in the making. He says this: sadness is looking at oneself. Happiness is looking at God. Conversion is nothing but a movement of the eyes. Isn't that brilliant? That's the best definition of conversion I have ever come across. I'll read it again. Sadness is looking at oneself. Happiness is looking at God. Conversion is nothing but a movement of the eyes. We're all called to conversion till the day we die. We all need it. But we're also all called to holiness. Let's just take a moment and ponder that in our own lives.